Hey guys, I'm back for another video, and today I'm going to be demonstrating my Minecraft Craftbukkit and Spigot plugin template, and I'll be showing off all the features, how to install it, and how to make plugins with it. So let's jump right in. Of course, the link to the repository will be in the description down below. As you can see, I've already pulled it from the repository to my computer. So before I show how to use it, let's show what it does. So I created this template for the sole purpose of making my life easier. I figured that I was going to be making a dozen plugins in my time in the Spigot community. So it was worth my time to make something that gets all the annoying stuff out of the way first, so that I can get straight to making my plugin work. So what does that exactly entail? Well, if you go to the main plugin class file here, it's literally just called plugin template.java. It comes pre-installed with a prefix. You can change what this prefix is, and then there's the console prefix, which doesn't have all these, color codes. It demonstrates a customizable setting, and then in the onEnable function here, or method, it links load configuration, which we'll get into in a bit, load language file, register commands, register events, and then it will post that it finished. And then I actually tabbed out a little thing here that allows you to schedule tasks, which is a nice little thing to have. It's commented out. If you do have any scheduled tasks, this is where you would put it. You would start them alongside your plugin. So load configuration, basically what that does is, if we go here, it will prepare the config.yml, generate one if it's not there, so it'll make the file. If the file does exist, then it will load it anyways. Just some general setup stuff. It'll copy the config file from in the project into an actual .yml that you can modify later once you've run the plugin once on a server. Actually, will update all your settings. So as you can see in the config, I have plugin prefix. So just to demonstrate that everything works, it will grab the prefix from here using chatcolor.translate alternate color codes, and then config.getString. And then we have custom setting, which is just config.getBoolean. So it demonstrates, first of all, how to translate color codes, also how to get a string from the config, also how to get a boolean from the config. Works the same way, config.getInt, and then you put in the custom settings name. As you can see, custom setting makes it very easy, even if you forget how this stuff works after many months of not working with it. And then of course it will say settings reloaded from the config. Now, reloaded is a fun term because it actually is set up in such a way that you can reload your settings by calling this function while the plugin's running. You don't have to rerun the plugin. Anyway, load language file is cool because there is a language setup in this plugin. So first of all, it loads the config, copies it just like the config, and then there's actually a map. I think it's called a map. Yeah, of phrases. So it's a hash map between a string and another string. So you can give a phrase a name, and then you can actually, if you go into the language.yml, it allows you to specify the name of the message and then put the message itself. And then what you could do is, in code, you can get this phrase by referencing its name, and it will paste in whatever this is. This is useful if you want your plugin to be multi-language. So you can literally just you can use this interface to make your plugin translatable for any language, which is a highly requested feature of some of my plugins, which is why I added this. Literally, the only way it works, phrases.put, and then you put the string, and then you put lang file config.getString, and then there you go. So yeah, it's very nice, very, very nice. And then obviously, to then pick up that phrase, you would have to do phrases.get. Yeah, and then you would type in, for example, price string. Yeah, and then that will get you the it'll get you this. So language files, that's the thing in this plugin, or this plugin template. Get phrase is actually built in, so you could do public string get phrase. I would do something like this, right? If I wanted to use get phrase, it would be, let's see, get phrase error message 1. I don't know. And then if there's anything in here with an entry of error message 1, whatever that text says will be pasted when you do phrases get phrase. Also, get versions a thing that we'll get into later. All right, So now we know that it loads the configuration. Obviously, when you have your config here, you can add as many settings as you like. Just make sure that to apply those changes to settings, you go into load configuration. Yeah, this is where you paste in your settings in between this and this. You don't want to change these. You just want to change the highlighted thing. Register commands is another big one. I have 2 commands built in. Well, actually, there's only 1 command. It's template right now. This is the type of plugin that has 1 command with like 100 different options. So obviously this is called on startup, get command template, set executor, and then actually that's in here. I actually have a package for my commands. This is the main command. It comes with all sorts of fun stuff, but we're going to get into that in a second. And then this sets up tab completion for that command. So if we go into events, chat, tab complete, this sets up the tab complete for the template command. It's very, very convenient. So it does come with an infrastructure that allows you to tab complete. So if I go into Minecraft, template, help, info, tutorial, reload. So if I do help, then of course it does that. So yeah, all of that's built in. So of course, if you want to add a command, you would have to go into the plugin.yml, make sure you specify a command. This is where I specified template, gives a description, make sure to put yours underneath. Permissions work very similarly, and then of course you'd have to set the executor and then set the tab complete, which means you'd have to go into the tab complete and then see this big old if statement. This is if the command is equal to template. If you have a new command, put it underneath. If this command is equal to, and then whatever. So that's something you should keep in mind. Now let's get into what the main command does. So tab complete is pretty straightforward. I actually just have if the user has permission, template.user. So it actually tab completes depending on your permissions. So if you don't have permission for example, if you don't have admin perms, it won't show you template reload because you don't want to just have a user reloading your plugin. Oh, that being said, actually, we'll get into that. But anyway, yeah, so this is where you would put the actual options for your tab complete is in this arguments.addAllArrays.as list. I could just add new command, and then that will show up as a tab complete. Just make sure it actually does something, because if it doesn't, then it'll tab complete and you'll type it and it will be like, I don't know what this command is. Anyway, that tab complete's pretty simple, straightforward. All of this annoying crap's done for you. You just literally have to paste in your commands here. Pretty nice. Everything's really done for you. So then let's go into main plugin command. All right, this is a fun one. So as I said before, the way this works is with this particular command, you type in the name of the plugin's command. So for this one, it's /template, which by the way is super easy to change because I'm using IntelliJ IDEA. If I wanted to change the name of template, I could literally refactor right here. See how it says template? I could go to refactor, rename, and then I could call it literally anything. And then pretty much every instance of the word template will get replaced with the thing that you want. Also, I would suggest you do that with the name of the entire plugin as well. I tried to make it so every spot, maybe not every spot, but like 99% of spots, where if you refactor rename, it will actually rename this entire directory and this entire directory for whatever you want. And it will make the command actually change. You'll make the .yml files stuff change. Tab complete. There might be a few spots missing, as I said, but yeah. Anyway, so the way this this template plugin's main command works, it has a switch statement, right? So if the well, this is a test of permissions. Luckily, I, have notes for everything, so you can read it if you need. Here's a reference to the main class, by the way. If you need it, you might not, but, it's useful to have the ability to reference the main class. Anyway, so switch, and then it will compare the word after template. So if the word is help, then it will run the help command, which is down here, which is basically just a bunch of, send messages, and it will say all the commands. The next one is info, which is another information dump. This shows my my social media links, the best plugin template ever. Obviously, you can change this to whatever you need. Tutorial is really cool. So tutorial / let's see, template tutorial Welcome to Template Plugin. This guidebook will show you everything you need to know about Template. Happy reading, ThirtyVirus. But this is really cool. So what's built in is the ability for a help menu. So if we go into helpers, menu utils, this is the tutorial menu. It opens up a book menu for you, and then you can change all of the pages. So like, for example, this is me adding a page to this book, and then here's adding a second page, right? Pages.add, and then translate alternate colors using the and symbol, and then literally just every single line of your book pages. So you can make a tutorial for your users using this thing here. This is how I actually made my Ultimate Shops thing works. So, oh, I don't actually have Ultimate Shops installed, but I did this with simple sorting. So /ss tutorial. Welcome to simple sorting. As you can see, I actually made a tutorial in my simple sorting plugin using this little thing. So yeah, you can make little books for your users with the, you don't have to pay attention to basically any of this. You just need to add and modify pages as you need right here. Main plugin command, go back. So that's the first three. And then you can put any plugin specific commands right in the middle there. I don't actually have any, but then there's the case of typing /reload. So if you have admin permissions, then obviously it will call the reload function, which is down here, or method, not function. So main.reload config, main.load configuration, main.load language file, and then it will actually inform players, basically a .send message. It's the same thing really. Configuration values and language settings reloaded. So again, you can actually put a language file message in there if you want. But yeah, you don't need to directly send messages. You can use the language file thing if you want. But yeah, so this provides a framework that allows you to reload the settings of the plugin while it's live. So as I said, if I go into plugins, template plugin, and then I go to config.yml. Okay. So as you can see, template plugin, I can call it Brandon's plugin. Well, actually, I think the apostrophe messes with it, so just Brandon's plugin. Then we can save that. And then we can do /template reload. And then it says Brandon's plugin instead of template plugin. It'll have the config that reloads just with a command instead of restarting the server. And that should be about it, I think. And then the default is the not. See, this is how to use the .language file stuff. So as you can see, utilities.warn player is basically an error message. And then you have the sender, which is obviously the command sender. Arrays as list, main.getPhrase. So that's where main comes in handy. That's why it's good to have a reference to it. And then getPhrase with the key not a command message, which if we go back to our language.yml, not a command message, that is not a command. The user can change that. So like if for example we go into language.yml, let's say this is a Spanish server, instead of this is not a command, it would say whatever that is in Spanish, and then it would work without any additional programming. So that's cool. So obviously if you want to make the language thing work, you're gonna have to make a reference to every single spot in your plugin that has a text message. For example, right here, you want to do it like this, but you don't want to do it like this. That's what it is. You want to do the main.getPhrase instead of just typing directly into the code. There you go. Anyway, that's it for the main command. Obviously, you can add as many commands as you like. Just make sure that when you do that, you register them in the register commands method. That goes without saying, I would imagine. Any new events that you need, I already have 2 of them for testing purposes. If you go into events, there's actually a couple of them. There's inventory click and block click. I have it set that when you punch the air, it makes a bat death noise just to inform you that the plugin is working. So if we go into block click, for example, utilities.PlaySound, there's a lot in utilities. Action sound.error, and then it would be event.getPlayer. So that's just to demonstrate that it works. You can obviously remove that. Inventory click is the same way. Anytime I click in the inventory, it's a little quiet because my settings are really low, but it does make a click noise whenever I click on anything in the inventory. So yeah, register your events that way. I would suggest copy pasting this. It's very helpful to reference the main class, especially with the language file stuff, get phrase and that sort of thing. Also, it's useful if you want to reload, but I would suggest that you only reload when you have to. As I said, main.reload config, main.load configuration, load lagging file. If you need to reload any other config files, I would suggest you do it in the same way I did so that you can reload it while the plugin's still going. Anyway, moving on. We don't need tab complete, blocks, inventory click. We don't need any of the events anymore. Utilities. All right, this is probably the biggest file in this entire project here. So I have a couple example things here that you can get rid of. One of them that's kind of useful, list of transparent blocks to be ignored when a player looks at a block. So for example, in my Ultimate Shops plugin, I made it so that when you right click on a slab, it brings up a menu, but you don't want to get denied when you right click on, say, a carpet in front of the slab. You just want to ignore the carpet. So that's where this comes in. We have a, we have a set called transparent, and it will ignore air, it will ignore carpets. And then if we go to inventory blocks, it's just another example. You can get rid of it if you don't need it. It just has all the shulker boxes in it. I use that one for shulker box backpacks. Okay, load resource. This is what is used in the, let's see, if we go to the main class here, as you can see, utilities.load resource, right? And that's how the config is loaded. If we go to lang file, that is how the lang file is loaded. You don't really need to know much about how this works. Basically, all it's really useful for is the fact that if there is no file, that just copies it directly into the folder for your plugin. It's just nice to have. Don't really need to explain how it works. To location string is actually not really that helpful unless you use my setup, but it converts a location into a string. Let's see, name item just makes my job easier, right? You put in an item stack and then you give it a name, it will name it. This is the same thing, except you give it a material instead of an item, so then it creates the item. This adds lore to an item, so you give it an item, a list of strings, it will set the lore to that. This will turn any string invisible. This is really helpful if you want to store any text inside of a menu, for example. That's a really obscure one. And then this turns invisible strings visible again. So again, if you're storing data in item lore, this is how you do it. You want to make it invisible so it doesn't show up to the player. And then you make it visible again if you wanted to. Well, actually, when you would need to turn it visible to then process it, because you don't want all these stray characters just floating around in your calculations with whatever you're storing. For example, if I wanted to store a location in the lore of an item, that's how I would do it, right? So I would take that location, convert it to a string, and then I would take that location string, turn it invisible, and then I would put it in the lore of the item. And then then that's good because I stored a location in the lore. So then later, if I wanted to get that location, I'd get the lore, the first line of lore, convert it back into a visible string, and then process it. Anyway, then there's one player, which basically it sends the message that you want. If it's an instance of a player, then it will play the sound. If it's not, obviously it won't. Inform player is the same thing, but without the whole, red text and warning thing. As you can see, chat color.red for the error one. And then this is a nice little thing called play sound. There's a bunch of them. There's open, notify, select, click, pops, break, error. And that's what all these action sounds are. So you can add more if you like. This just makes it easy to play sounds. That's utilities. And I think that's pretty much everything. Multiversion is a little API that a friend of mine made, and I've been piggybacking off of it for a while to make this plugin do what I want. All you really need to know is that this X materials file would need to be updated, but basically the way it works is that you can get materials, use materials using this class, and it will universally translate it between versions instead of having to reference, say, Minecraft.material.wooden axe, because the name changes between versions. Like right here, wither skeleton wall skull, it could be skull or skull underscore item, that sort of thing. Here you go, stone brick slab, stone slab, step, double step. So yeah, it just makes the multi-version part work. So if you want your plugin to work from say 1.8 to 1.15, then this is how you would do it, is with X material. Version is something that's definitely going to need to be updated as time goes on. Ignore this 1.14 stuff. There was a change in one of the snapshots itself, which made me had to do that. But for every new version of the game, you're going to want another line of code like this. Let's say 1.16 comes out, I put it underneath. And what get version does is it just spits back what version you're using, so that, say, if your plugin is meant for 1.8 and 1.9 and you wanted to process some information with the item in your main hand, you want to, for example, if it's 1.8, it would be, oh, player.getInventory.getItem in hand if it's 1.8. If it's 1.9, then do player.getInventory.getItem in main hand. There's two different functions there. So to prevent a crash, you have to be like, if the version is this, then do this. That's how you do that. So yeah, very, very helpful. So if version.getVersion is equal to version dot, v1_8. Sound, it works in a very similar way to the X material. Goes kind of without saying. You could read what all this does. It's just a multi-version sound player. Reflection utils, you don't really have to touch this. Book utils, there's 3 versions of it. You don't have to touch it. It basically makes the books work. And then API. API is where you'd put a whole bunch of other multi-version. Oh, this is a perfect example of the if version thing. If version.getVersion is bigger than, so if it's after 1.14, then use 1.14.4.openbook, which is this file here, a .openbook. And then if the version is bigger than 1.8, then use the 1_9 version of the function. And then if the version is 1.8, then do that. So there you go. Well, else then it would obviously be 1.8 because it's not bigger than 1.8. This doesn't support 1.7, but you could easily make it do that if you change the API, or no, the version file, and then import the correct Craftbukkit. That's why we imported like every version of Craftbukkit, by the way, just so we don't get any errors when we're typing our code. And then this is the example I just said. Get item in hand. This is a multi-version. So in the API, this is where you want to put things. This is where you would want to put generalized functions that, you don't want to do if the version's this, then do this. If the version's this, then do this. Like, that gets annoying. So this is where you would make your multi-version functions. So if version.getVersion is bigger than version 1.9, then return player.getInventory.getItem in main hand. If it's not, which means if the version is 1.8, then return player.getInventory.getItem in hand. It says it's deprecated, but that's okay because this is what replaced it, but we're using both jar files at once here. This is a pretty extensive video tutorial. I hope this helps you out when you're making a plugin. Literally, if you want to make this do anything, all you have to do is just change the name of this, change the name of that, and then maybe, I don't know, go into events, add an event handler, maybe change the plugin's command infrastructure in here, add a few case statements like case, you could be like /template destroy, and then it would destroy a block. You would be like case destroy, obviously add a break statement. It's pretty conclusive, this template. I would think it allows you to do most of the things that you could do with a Minecraft plugin. It'll get you started within a half an hour, and it's pretty dang nice. As I said, links in the description. I would recommend using IntelliJ IDEA, but you don't have to, I guess. You would just have to recompile everything in a different format. But anyway, I guess that's it. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys later.